So today we're going to talk about fountain pens.
Illustrations by Pete.
So a viewer by the name of Nomad decided to write in and ask a question about these things. They were really talking about dip pens and India ink, and then we got on the topic of fountain pens, and they said, well, I don't know how to fill or take care of a fountain pen. So we're going to talk about it quickly, and then we're going to go into a drawing. One of the benefits of fountain pens is you can use all sorts of different colors of inks. And I think that's the big appeal, is that it's a little bit more sophisticated, but you can change whatever mood you're in. You can just write with that color. Don't get me wrong, dip pens are fun too. But a lot of people are not going to sit there with open ink on their desk with important papers or drawing, and then you're going to just keep dipping and going back and forth. You're going to spill something. You're going to get a dot somewhere you didn't intend to get. That's okay. It's a part of the process, but I think for fountain pens, they're just a little bit more controllable, and you can decide what you want to do with them. There's some reasons to have them and that they're good, and there are some reasons that they absolutely suck. So we're going to talk about those things. So one last thing I want to mention before we get started. I am not a fan of glitter, but they do make these weird little inks that have mica in the bottom. You can see it. I think you can see that pretty well. Let's see if the camera will focus on that instead of my face for a second. Okay, can you see that? The glitter at the bottom of that ink? Yep, it's glitter. It's mica is what I'm told. But don't ever put that in your fountain. They make fountain pen ink, they say, with the little pieces of mica in there. I don't understand that, because to me, that's a particle that can get stuck. So I would not use glitter in my fountain pen ink, but I think Diamine uses some weird thing with certain brands, and there are other ones out there, they're all over the place, where they have like a little shimmer in the fountain pen ink. I've never tried those. I can't tell you what to use and if they're good. Some people like that. Some people think that that's fine, and that's fine. If you think you want to try that, give it a shot. But I'm not telling you to try it because I don't know, and it could get stuck, and then you're looking for my address to come here and yell at me for breaking your $100 pen. I don't want that kind of a situation. So, but the one that I just showed you, that's for a dip pen. It came with a glass dip pen, which I love glass dip pens too, because see, the thing is with a dip pen, it scratches the paper, and I don't like that. If you get a normal fountain pen, they don't scratch the paper, they kind of glide. That's what I like. Gliding pens with a very wet ink that just kind of glide across the paper, that's what I enjoy. But some people like the dip pens where it scratches the paper. That's fine, you can try that. But the glass dip pen can scratch if you push hard, but really, you don't need to push hard. It's a very light stroke over the top. It does not scratch the paper. It's pretty good. First, let's talk about some pens. Okay, so first let's talk about a few pens. So this is the Black Forest fountain pen. I love this pen. It's an amazing pen. It works wonderfully. It comes in various different nib sizes. There's a bent nib on here now. But what you're going to do for most fountain pens, you screw off the back like this, and what you do is you expose a cartridge. Now the cartridge, you can take this cartridge out and fill it up. Just put it in the ink reservoir and just you spin this. There's a plunger in here. I'll show you some of the detail later. And you can fill it up like that. But then it takes time to get down through here and get to the nib. So you can also just put this whole thing into the ink, and then you run the plunger. So first you bring the plunger all the way down, put it in the ink, run the plunger all the way back up. It fills with the ink, and then you just wipe off the tip, reassemble the body, and you're ready to go. It's already filled out through the feeder, and it gets its way down to the tip. You're good to go. Okay, so I'm going to show you with the Lamy Safari, because I know that it's just about empty and I can pull the cartridge out without a problem. So you can pull that cartridge out and stick that into the ink and then fill it that way, and it has a little plunger, and I'll show you that here in a second. Lamy Safari also has little notches for where the cartridge goes so that it can't go anywhere else, and then it clips in and you know it's seated properly. That's another thing. You want to make sure that that's pushed in all the way. Otherwise it's going to be leaking all from everywhere. You don't want that. Now before I move on too far, this pen and many pens also let you replace the nib. So yes, it unscrews from here to get to the back where the cartridge is. It also unscrews up here at the top. And then you can put in other nibs. So this is a bent nib that's on here right now. For this particular pen, it comes with a fine nib and an extra fine nib that you could also just put in there and switch them out. Okay, now these are some of my favorite pens. These are demonstrator pens. So first I'll show you, this is also an empty one, but this has a brush tip, but don't worry about that. Just pretend there's a nib up here. It's the same thing. It's the exact same thing you're going to be dealing with. So instead of unscrewing this, you put the whole thing in, and you see this plunger here. As you turn this, this plunger will run down. And what you want to do is put that in the ink, and then as you pull it back, it'll fill up with ink. And you just pull it all the way back, and then you wipe this off. Now you can see that's a lot of ink. These hold a ton of ink, which is another reason I like them. They don't run out as much. So once you know it's full, you can take it somewhere and see when you're going to run out. I love these demonstrator pens. They're my favorite. So on this one, you don't unscrew anything else. It's the same thing. You just dip it in, you run the plunger all the way down, you put it in the ink and fill it all the way up. And you can see, I don't know if you can see, it's actually very full, so you can't really see much movement in there. It holds a lot of ink. This one's a little bit different. So this is the Moonman T1. I don't believe they make, no, they make this pen. They just don't call it Moonman anymore. I think they call it another name. I'll put the link down below for what it's called now. This is the Moonman C2. Again, they don't use the Moonman name anymore. I don't know why. It's the same company. They use a different name. But this one doesn't have anything to turn. There's no plunger here. But this is probably the easiest one to fill. You just unscrew the top here, and you just pour the ink right in, and that's it. It's an open reservoir, and you can see there that's just, I have a ox blood ink in there from Diamine, so it's red, but that's it. The disadvantage of that is that you have to wait then for the ink to flow all the way down through the feeder to the tip, but it's once it's there, and it's fine. It works fine. Just wait a couple of minutes, leave the pen tipped a little bit, and it'll be fine. These aren't hard to clean out either. This one's easy because you just open it up, rinse it out, and then you have to, or what I do is I take one of those little syringe, ink syringes, and pass water through here, and that's fine. That'll work. Usually what you do with these is you run the plunger down, and then you fill it up with fresh water, and then you dump it, and then you keep doing that. Fresh water, dump it. Fresh water, dump it until it comes out clear. That's not a big deal. Some people like to put things in a cleaner. I know Dr. P.H. Martin, Bombay India Ink, they come with a cleaner. They have a cleaner rather. I believe Speedball also has there's tons of cleaners out there, pens cleaners. This one's nice because it's a general purpose cleaner, so it's for inks, dyes, pigments, acrylics, and watercolor. You can use anything with this. It won't damage the pen, it won't damage any of the mechanisms inside. Everything will be fine. Now the last thing I wanted to show you, this is a Pentel Pocket Brush. It is not a fountain pen technically, but it basically works the same way. So it has a brush at the tip, that's all. That's the only difference, is it has a brush instead of a nib, but it also would have a cartridge in the back as well. So this is something that a lot of fountain pens come with. They're just pre-filled cartridges. They're sealed on the end. You put them in and it punctures the end, and then you have a full cartridge, so you don't have to do all the twisting and things. You just pop out the old one, put in the new one, and that's just how that one works. However, what I do is I empty these, and then I put whatever ink I want inside of it, and it's not a twisting refill cartridge. You can just use these a few times because then the plastic around the end gets stretched out, and then you toss them and just take a new one and do the same thing. But I like to do that because I don't necessarily want to use their ink. I want to use the ink that I want to use in it. So some of my favorite inks. This is one of my favorite. It's the Carbon Black. I love this ink. It is the only one that I know of in a fountain pen that I know of. I'm sure there are plenty of them, but it's the only one that I know of. I think Noodlers makes a bunch, but it's the only one that I use really to that's waterproof after you put it down. So once it dries, it's waterproof, but it's still safe to put in your fountain pen. It's one of the only ones. Normally, you do not want to put any India ink in your fountain pens, and this is not India ink. It says Carbon Black. It's supposed to, but it's not. It's just, it's fountain pen ink. You can use. I've used this in all of my fountain pens and not had a problem with any of them. And when you write, it dries and it's completely solid. Then you can go over it with watercolor or whatever you want. It's not going to change anything. Now the diamine inks are not. So, as a matter of fact, any other ink that I know of is not. If you put it down on paper, go over it with watercolor, it's going to dilute it out and it's going to run because it's water soluble. So, but some of my favorites, the Diamine series, are just amazing. The color is beautiful. The Twilight, the Oxblood, the Smoke on the Water, and the Aurora Borealis. Those are some of my favorites, but I use these a lot. As a matter of fact, the drawing you're going to see today uses this Twilight and the Oxblood ink in two different pens, the two demonstrator pens I was just showing you. Colorverse inks are also wildly popular. I have this big one, and I have some of these small ones too. They're just sample sizes, but if you take a ink syringe, you take it out of here and put it in the pen, it works just the same. So this is the Methuselah Tree here and the Rainy Day. The Rainy Day is a nice, beautiful pale blue. I really enjoy that color, but the Methuselah Tree is a little bit more like a reddish or orangey color, like an autumn color. And these are both autumn colors because they're a little bit muted. And those are the colors that I like, so that's wonderful. They don't seem as liquidy as some of the other inks. Like the Diamine inks seem a little bit more wet when you put them down. This one in particular, the Rainy Day, it just seems like a drier ink, but really, so if you scribble in one spot and just go over it and over it and over it, you're going to see the marks as you go. It's going to dry a little uneven. That's okay. It puts off a nice color, and I like the way that it looks. Now, I want to clarify, I love this ink, this Noodler's Polar Black. The color is exactly what I want for a black ink. However, when I put this, even though it's a fountain pen ink, it says so on it, it's sold as a fountain pen ink, and in the literature it even says, you know, putting this in your pen will help the flow over time. I've found that's not true. If I put this in, it's beautiful flow when I first use it, and then if it sits for a little while, it gets stuck. Something happens, it congeals inside or something, and it gets stuck in there, and then I've got to take the whole thing apart and rinse it out. And sometimes it's never the same. So I don't put this in my fountain pens, but I do use it in the brush pens. And these brush fountain pens, I use them in here, and I love it. They're wonderful. It works great. I love the color of this black. It's the most even finish I've ever had with any ink, and it's seamlessly it's even, it's solid, and I like the color. It's like a very matte, very dark black. For my Pentel Pocket Brush, these are the things that I usually put in there. I usually use either the Bombay Black India ink or the Dr. P.H. Martin's Black Star High Carb ink. And I know this high carb one is supposed to be extra black, but really they're both just black. At the end of the day, there's not much difference between them. You can use them interchangeably. You can use them at the same time. It doesn't seem to matter much, but definitely never put India ink in your fountain pen. You can use it for dip pen or for the brush pens, and that's what I use it for. I use this for the Pentel Pocket Brush. That's what's in there all the time, is one of these two. Usually I like this one a little better. It flows a little bit nicer. It's a little bit thinner, I guess, but it lays down just as much. So I'm not really sure, but this is what I use. Here's two honorable mentions here. This Higgins ink, It's great ink. It's the first ink I ever used, and it's great for mixing with watercolor. It is waterproof. This is an India ink. These are both India inks. Do not put this in your fountain pens, but they're good inks. The thing is, this smells like the worst fish you have ever smelled in your life. I don't know why the ink smells like fish, but it does. This Black Cat is from Blick, and it's a good ink. It's not as dark as I thought it would be. It's a little bit lighter of a shade of black, but if you were going to do something a little bit lighter and maybe mix with water and you didn't care how dark it got, that's something you can use too. And it's a big bottle, 89 milliliters, 3 ounces. It was only like a couple bucks. It was a pretty cheap ink. So, okay, now we're going to get into the drawing. Okay, now ink drawings do take a lot of time, so I decided to use the little, I think it's 5.5 inches by 5.5 inches or 14 by 14 centimeters. This book here, it's a gray tone. It's the Hahnemühle gray, or Hahnemühle, however you want to say that. I'll let you guys figure that out. You can correct me however you want. But I decided to use this, and I'm going to use 2 inks. Now, I don't know why I didn't use any white at all to make any pop happen. I just used the regular blue and red. It was the Diamine Twilight, which is a very, very dark blue. And then the Diamine Oxblood, which is a very, very dark red. And you'll see it. I'll color in some areas. You'll see the difference in the colors as I go. I don't know what I was going for here, but I was happy with the end result. It was kind of like a weird creature. That's basically everything that I do. You could point out, yeah, that could be a thing. It could be a creature. It could be alive. Maybe not. Who knows? So anyway, I wanted to say this is my fault in not adding any white to this. The point of the book, of using the gray books and the tan books, is to add a little bit of white contrast to it, make something pop. I did not do that, so I should probably be fired. So I think the biggest benefit of using these fountain pens is the colored inks. You can use, and you can with dip pens as well. You can use all the acrylic inks with dip pens, but with this you can carry it with you in your pocket. You're not going to carry a dip pen in your pocket with inks in them and with inks all over the place, and then sit down at any table when you're trying to write something or draw something and open up all these ink jars everywhere. You're not going to do that, really. That's for an in-home studio thing, not for going out in the wild. But with this, you can just fill up a fountain pen with whatever color ink you want, take it wherever you want, sketch, draw, write, do whatever you have to do, not worry about it. And that's also why I like the demonstrator pens, because they hold so much ink. You're basically, if they're full, you're going out, you're going to write for a few days. Never worry about it. Don't worry about anything running out. You'll be fine. But I guess the biggest drawback is the care that you need to put into them. Now, these 2 pens here, I have not touched these pens in maybe, I'd say, a good 6 months. And yet, I picked them up and they write like I just put the ink in fresh. It was very, very easy. I filled them up and I set them on the shelf. I always put them kind of horizontal. I don't ever put them vertical. I just lay them down flat, and that's fine. And they work. It picked it up, and I just opened it up and went to use it, and it worked fine, because these inks are very water soluble. At the very worst, you just have to wet the tip a little bit. It'll be fine. But I didn't have to do that. I just opened it up. They worked just like I had just put them in there this morning. It was just, that's how they work. But you will find an occasion where you have to clean it out. You may have to take all the pieces apart, as many pieces as you can, and soak them in some kind of cleaner or water or something to get everything out, and anything that's stuck in there or congealed, you get that out. But really, for the most part, you're using water-soluble ink. You don't have to do that. You just, a little bit of water through it would probably bring it right back to life. Or sometimes, if it's running a little dry, I just twist the end, push a little bit of extra ink out the tip, and all of a sudden it's writing like brand new. So that's one of the benefits. You do have to watch what you put in it. Make sure you test inks on maybe some cheap pens before you go put them in your expensive pens. But you can find fountain pens that are amazing. That Black Forest fountain pen, I think it was under $10. I think I found it for under $10, and I got it, and it was amazing. I loved it. And then the nibs were only maybe another $4 or $5 on, maybe $10. Let's say there's $20 total in that pen, and that's a pen with 4 nibs now, because the one comes in it, and then you get a package of 3. It's an amazing deal and a very good pen. The demonstrator pens you can probably find anywhere from, you know, even the cheaper ones you can find anywhere between, I don't know, maybe like $20, $25, $30, all the way up to whatever you want to spend on them. You can spend money on fountain pens like they're going out of style, and I don't know why you'd spend money on something going out of style, but if you would, you could do that with fountain pens. You could spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars on certain pens, and that's what you want to do. But you can get these. Most fountain pens now write just as well as the ones that cost that much. It's really about the other things. Like there's this special Japanese lacquer that goes on one of them that costs so much money because it's so rare, so hard to make. So they charge hundreds and hundreds of dollars for that pen because of the lacquer on the outside. It has nothing to do with the writing ability of the pen. Most pens will write. They write just fine, and everything will just work like normal. You can just get any dollar amount pen, unless they're really, really cheap. Like you get a $4 pen or something, you're probably not going to be writing with that pretty well. But it doesn't matter. You can get, and they make copies. If there's, oh, I want this pen, but it's $100. I don't want to spend $100. Oh, there's another company that makes the exact same pen under a different name for less money, and it's the exact same thing. So fountain pens are a little bit of a hobby of mine. I like to collect them. I like to draw with them. I like to write with them. I don't draw with them very often, and I don't know why, because I really enjoy drawing with them. They're fun to draw with, and I love all the different colored inks. So usually I use black ink, except when I use these inks, the diamond inks. The Twilight is probably my favorite color other than black, and the Oxblood is probably my second favorite other than the Twilight. So I really enjoy these. And I've had these pens for a while, and there's nothing like picking up a fountain pen and drawing with it. If you've never tried that, please do that. It's a fun experience. It's just nice. Get a color ink that you really enjoy, one that you really like. Look, there's tons of videos on them, and you can check them out. Most pen shops have little sample packs. You can just pick up a couple little samples and put it in there. It's nice. It's a nice experience. It's just a part of the routine, almost like it's a part of your ritual of drawing. You get the pen out, you put what ink you want in it. It's a nice experience. And speaking of having things for a long time, I don't understand. Have you ever seen these videos that are like, oh, long-term review of this or long-term review of that? And you're like, oh, okay, that's something that I would like to purchase, so I'd like to hear your long-term review of it. And then you click on the video and they say, I've had this for 3 months. That's it? That's long term to you? 3 months is barely enough time to throw away the wrapper. Your sweat hasn't even absorbed into it yet. What are you doing? Long term is like, I don't know, I've been using this for a few years, and here are my thoughts. That's long term. 3 months, you probably haven't even formed an opinion yet. And if you did, it's like a preliminary opinion, not a long-term opinion. Do you know how many times I've fallen for that on YouTube? It pisses me right off. I'm probably going to make one of those videos. I'm probably going to do that with something that I purchased last week. But just don't worry about that. It still pisses me off. Because people are dumb. And I want to talk about that a little bit too. Have you ever choked on your own saliva? That's the most embarrassing thing. You're choking on fluid that's produced in your own mouth, and for some reason, your brain malfunctions and you breathe with a mouthful of it instead of swallowing and then breathing. Humans, even as infants, we do this. Even little kids, you know, they're babies, they choke on something. You gotta spin them over and make sure they don't choke. We're a messed up species. It's just, go to any pool and you will inevitably see someone who breathes while they're underwater, and you see them, they come up there. I don't see any other creature do this. When you never see a turtle, like the turtles in the lakes, they only have their nostrils sticking up, and the water sometimes splashes over the top of them, whatever. They don't jump up choking. It's only people that do that. When they, you know, the water comes over their nose, they hold their breath, and then they wait for it to go away and they breathe again. I don't understand how we're not extinct yet. We just do the dumbest things. I've seen people do some dumb things, but like, we're not designed with that part of the brain which tells us we need to actually live. We need to think about what we're doing before we do it. And there's a warning in your car manual. Go look at your car manual, and it'll say cruise control does not steer the vehicle. You know why that's in there? Because some moron decided to hit the cruise control button on their RV. In case you don't know what an RV is, it's like a bus, but inside you have like a bed and a small kitchen and a bathroom. It's for camping. So they hit the cruise control, and then he went and decided to go make himself a cup of coffee in the back. And you think to yourself, is the guy an idiot? But he sued the RV manufacturer and won. We are dumb. It's hard to relate because we actually have cars that drive themselves today. I know that. I get that. But back when this happened, we was just dumb. And do you remember the lady who went to McDonald's drive-thru to get a coffee? And she put the coffee between her legs. And when she hit a bump, she squeezed the paper cup, and the coffee spilled out on her lap and burned her. She then sued McDonald's because the coffee was hot. Of course it's hot. Is coffee? It's supposed to be hot beverage? She won. She won the lawsuit. That's why if you ever look on the side of the cups, they say, caution, contents is hot. What would she have done if they would have if she would have ordered the coffee and they handed her a cup of iced coffee? Probably complain, because people understand when you say coffee, you're asking for a hot beverage. And you would have to say, I would like an iced coffee to get a cold beverage. Just keep in mind, every warning label you see is because there's some dumb piece of donkey dung who did that thing and then sued the company because of how dumb they were. I don't know how I'm going to top this story. This is a very uplifting story, I know, and we're going to try to get past it, but I just think about that. The next time you see a warning label, there was someone who caused that warning label. Okay, we need to talk about something a little bit more uplifting here. So, here's what I want to talk about. When anyone ever says to me on a video, they say something like, oh, I really got something out of that video. That's my favorite thing to hear. Not because it strokes my ego. It's not because, oh, that's because I'm so good, I'm so great, and people are inspired by me. No, that's not why. That's not how it works. The truth is, it has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with you. I'm just a goofball running his mouth and showing you mediocre art at best. What it tells me and why I get so excited to hear that is because I think it shows how passionate you are about art. It shows your passion and your desire to create, and that's why I think it's exciting. That's why I like to hear it, because it's like I'm connecting with someone else who loves to create, who has a passion for creating, just like me. That's why I always say the end result of your piece doesn't matter. All that shows is where you are on your journey. You're still progressing, and you'll get better no matter what it looks like now. But people will connect with you because based on that shared passion, they're going to see it in your artwork. They're going to see you have a passion for creating, and you'll find your community there. And sometimes I post videos and the art is just, it's trash. It really is. So I don't care. For me, I look at it and say, okay, so what? I still post it because it isn't about showing you my best masterpiece every time. It's about connecting with you. If you can remove your ego, you will find success in art. Don't let it affect you when people say something that's great. Hey, look, that's a great piece. Just disconnect there. Don't let that affect you, and then it won't offend you if someone says, hey, that what you created, it sucks. I think it should be thrown in the garbage. Just disconnect from the result and get lost in the process. That's what my advice is to you. Good or bad doesn't matter. You created something that has never existed before, and that's amazing. It doesn't matter what it looks like in the end. And people will connect with you because they're connecting with your passion. Now, that's not an absolute statement. I'm not saying that people are always going to connect with you. They have to like your style and like what you're doing. I understand that. That's your art. That's how it is. But that art is your book cover. And if they are interested, then they'll start to read your story. And that's where the deeper connection happens. But the cover itself, it doesn't have to be perfect. It only has to be interesting. It has to entice people to get to know you a little more and look a little bit more into what you're doing. So keep that in mind for your next piece. Maybe it won't be so difficult to create. Maybe you won't feel so much pressure, especially in the ugly phase of the art. Every piece has this ugly phase. It's like you've just started the initial layers or the initial section that you're working on, and you look at it and you're like, oh, that doesn't match the picture in my head because you haven't built it up enough yet. Now, some of my art looks like absolute garbage until the final details are put in. I find this especially with watercolor. Almost every watercolor piece I do, I want to throw away until I get to the final details. I put them in. I'm like, oh, okay, that actually looks nice. But for me, that's where the magic happens. So I like those details. But I've learned to not get upset if it doesn't look good until the piece is done. And even then, if it looks bad, it doesn't seem to matter because it was so focused on the process. That's where my focus is. That either way, I had a great experience. So you got to cut yourself some slack and take some pressure off. That's not how I started this conversation, but that's where I ended. I don't remember exactly where I started, but I just want you to know that, oh, right, we're people connecting. So if you just focus on the process and show your passion in your work, people will connect with you. Don't worry about the end result. You'll get better. You'll improve. Just keep going. Keep moving forward. Don't worry about that part. Just worry about building those relationships and connecting. Even if you're not trying to sell your art. I'm not saying as a business thing. Maybe you're just trying to connect with people and say, look, this is the kind of art I do. What kind of art do you do? Or I like the kind of art you do, and this is what kind I do. Whatever the case is, that connection, that's the key. And that's really how you find your support in art. I mean, it's important to have support as an artist. We all need that. We need someone, because in your own head, you're looking at something saying, this is garbage. This is trash. I should throw it out. I should never pick up another pen, pencil, paint, anything. It's terrible. It sucks. I suck. And I should never do anything ever again. And you need those people to say, look, what you did is nice. What you did inspired me a little bit. I enjoy what you did. And now I want to create something because I saw you create something. And when you hear that connection, that's what I'm talking about. That's where the magic happens. That's where it's like, oh, okay, it doesn't matter what this looks like. I'm building this bridge here, and that's important to me. So just keep that in mind when you're doing something. That's where you'll find your support. Just don't worry about the pressure. I know it's pressure. It's so hard to create art sometimes. Just don't worry about that. You focus on what you're building and what you're doing, and everything else will come around that. I don't know if that makes any sense to anybody. Maybe I just was rambling in my own head and that just happened to make sense to me at the time. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. We'll see how that works out. Okay, I think I saved the whole conversation with that last piece. I think we're back in a better place. I'm not complaining and yelling about people, and you can still enjoy this conversation. Now, I do have a question for you, though. Here's what I want to know. Usually, I do these types of videos. This is what I do. I have a drawing, and then I'm talking to you. That's all wonderful. And I enjoy this type of video. This is what I like to do. But once in a while, I just want to have like something small to say, and I want to just pop on the camera, say something, and post it, and do like a short little video. And I want to know from you, do you think that's okay? Let me know in the comments down below. Is that okay that I do that? And the reason I'm bringing this up towards the end, later part in the video, is because I'm asking for the opinions of the people who actually watch my videos all the way through, not the opinions of people who just click on for a second and say, oh, this is boring, and they scrub through it and they, oh, okay, I'm done with this, and they click off. So for you people who are really true fans of this show for some reason, and I love you for it, but do you think, like, once in a while, can I just pop on a talking head video and not have a drawing, and that's okay? Well, and I don't mean can I do that, I'm just saying, is that okay versus putting it into a longer format where I just pile on 45 different subjects while I'm drawing a single thing? And I don't know how often I would do that, but I just thought maybe that would be something that I could add a little bit of extra content to the channel, but there would not be a drawing involved. So I don't know if that's what you're looking for. If you're looking for the drawing and not just the talking, then I understand that. I don't take any offense to that. You say, no, I'd rather you just do the drawing and talk to me. I like doing the multiple stimulation, the visual and then the auditory. So I understand that, but just let me know. What do you think down below? Okay, so thumb up the video if you have ever looked at a warning and realized I was the one who did that. I was the one who caused that accident, and that's why they had to put the warning on that label or on that thing or whatever. I was the one who called the town and asked them to move the deer crossing away from my house because I didn't want the deer to cross there anymore. So I asked them to move the sign away. And just, if that's you can thumb up the video. Alright, that's about it for me. I'm going to go, and I'll see you in the next one.